The Jets clean out their lockers as they now look ahead to the offseason. Hey everyone, welcome in to another edition of Jet Setting. Rob Wong joined alongside by Winnipeg Sun sports editor Ted Wyman. And Ted, the Jets held their end of season news conferences and a lot of the players were very forthcoming about why things didn't go well against Colorado, but now the focus shifts to the offseason. We'll get to the future of Rick Bowness in a moment, but we got to start with the roster, and the Jets made several major moves last offseason. Are you expecting another big overhaul this year?
I don't know about a big overhaul. That wouldn't make a ton of sense, but there's a sense out there that there is maybe going to be some moves. There are players that maybe have been here for quite a long time and might need a change of scenery. And the one that really comes to mind is Nikolai Ehlers. He's been a very good member of the Winnipeg Jets for quite some time. He certainly has not performed in the playoffs, and he didn't really do it again this year. But his comments at the garbage bag day were not very they sounded like he just really wasn't sure what his future was going to be, and that he needed to sit down and talk about it. It wasn't like, yeah, I absolutely expect to be back. It was more like, maybe he's thinking that that's a possibility as well. He's under contract. It would have to be a trade, but whether he maybe is going to ask for one or something like that is, seems to be on the table. I think the Jets would be fine if they keep him too, but there's just some talk that the roster isn't quite built for the playoffs, and I mean I think that's true. I think we've seen that the last 2 years. They're really not. You have to elevate your game, and the Colorado Avalanche elevated their game incredibly well. They weren't as good as the Jets during the regular season, but they elevated, and they were much, much better than the Jets in the postseason. The Jets weren't able to elevate to that same level, and that goes to intensity. It goes to just taking that speed an inch farther, winning that puck battle, winning that foot race, and they weren't doing it. And so the thought is that it's a lineup that's going to need a couple of changes in order to be successful. I mean, they've got to do something that's going to allow them to win more than one playoff game. The fact that they make the playoffs, well, it's not that easy in the NHL these days. Only 16 teams make it. So you have to take that for what it's worth. And I'm sure a lot of the fans do that. Well, that's pretty, it's good to make the playoffs. You just got to be able to take a step further when you get there. And if this particular team is not built for the playoffs, then there's going to have to be a couple of changes. And I do think, they'd like to get, Ville Heinola on the blue line next year. So the question is, where would he fit in? And then you wonder if Nate Schmidt, with his contract, if they're going to try to move that or buy him out. Brendan Dillon is a unrestricted free agent who says he wants to come back. And the same with Dylan DeMello. But they're older players, and the question is, at some point, you're going to have to transition. So would those guys end up not coming back? And up front, it certainly doesn't seem like Tyler Toffoli will be coming back, and Sean Monahan is going to be an unrestricted free agent as well. So I could really see there being some changes, but it won't be anything quite as drastic as last year. Last year at this time, we're talking about Wheeler's probably going to be gone, and he was. Dubois is probably going to be gone, and he was. People thought maybe Mark Scheifele and Connor Hellebuck were going to be on their way out. They weren't. They were signed long-term, and it really did benefit the Jets. So hard to predict exactly what they will do, but I would not expect a massive overhaul.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that would be the case, as you mentioned, but clearly a lot of UFAs that need some new contracts, and maybe some of them do ultimately return to Winnipeg. When it comes to Rick Bowness, of course, it was a tough season on and off the ice for him. Some medical issues with himself, some medical issues with his wife that had to be resolved as well. And this is a guy that's getting up there in age, and maybe he's at a point, Ted, where he just wants to do something else with his life. He's clearly putting a lot into the Jets still at this point. He said he doesn't know what his coaching future holds, but he isn't saying what it will be just yet. What do you expect to happen with Rick Bowness?
Well, he doesn't hold all the cards because it's a team option on him coming back for another year, and they're in a succession plan. Like, they have to be in a succession plan. Rick Bowness didn't come here to coach for a super long time. And I don't think the expectation is that he was going to coach for a super long time. It was a transition. They needed somebody to get them past, Paul Maurice leaving. And then they need to, have their plan for who's going to be in place down the road. The question is just how long Rick Bowness is going to stay. The guy's 69 years old. He's already, if not the oldest coach in the NHL. When Jacques Martin was coaching this year, it would have been close. And he's been, he hasn't had that easy of a time with things. He got struck pretty hard by COVID last season. His wife obviously had her health issue this year. Sounds like she's doing well now, but that was a big issue for him. And yeah, he did have to come back for a minor surgery of some sort earlier this season. And it's got to be frustrating. Like, it's got to be hard, for someone of any age to deal with a team, kind of like the Jets, where they have really responded to him so well during the regular season and responded, like, for him to turn them into a good defensive team, it's a minor miracle. Like, they were not a good defensive team at all when he showed up, and he got them to stick to a structure and become the best defensive team in the NHL in the regular season. But then in the playoffs, that's all gone. He didn't really have any answers. The players didn't really have any answers for why it went so wrong. And then you start to wonder if, that's, maybe he's just not. I just know it has to be very frustrating for him. And at his age, how much longer do you want to keep doing it if it's going to be that kind of a mental grind? So I see him. I think he's going to think about it over the summer. He's going to talk to his wife. He's going to talk to his family. He's going to talk to the management of the Jets. And I could see it going either way. And I could also see them potentially elevating Scott Arniel into the post of head coach. He's done a fine job when Rick's been away. This year, he's been a head coach in the NHL before. He's got a long history in Winnipeg. There's also, at some point, like if you need to get over a hump and become a good playoff team, you might want to go and get an experienced playoff coach. Not that Rick wasn't, but if he's, deciding he's stepping aside because of his age or he wants to retire, then you might want to look around and see what's out there in terms of somebody that can really get this team to elevate. And it's not like the coaching carousel in the NHL isn't always in motion. Lindy Ruff's back with Buffalo, and Peter Laviolette just moves around and he has success everywhere he goes. There's probably going to be somebody out there that they could turn to make that happen. So that's going to be a big part of the storyline for what happens with the Winnipeg Jets going forward. I think Rick Bowness is a very, very well-liked man across the NHL. I don't think there's very many people that are more well-liked, and I don't think anyone in Winnipeg would mind if he wanted to continue for at least another year. But he has to make that choice himself. And if I'm him, the frustration of how things have gone the last 2 years would have taken a pretty big toll.
Yeah, it's going to be a very interesting decision for him, and going to be some interesting decisions for this roster. What do you think the Jets should do this summer? Leave your thoughts in the comments section below. For Ted Wyman, I'm Rob Wong. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll talk to you next time.